You are listening to audiobooks at Great Dragon Audio Channel. Up next is Demon Emperor Episode Sao. Chapter Kong. Although Nguyen Ho was a typical celestial demon, clearly originating from the outer reaches, the one who truly introduced him to the shamanistic sorcery of this realm was this heavenly maiden Ju Hong. Soon, Nguyen Ho once again witnessed heavenly maiden Ju Hong's methods for subduing malevolent spirits and deities. Within the spiritual realm, heavenly maiden Ju Hong extended her hand and ordered someone to bring a magical artifact. Bring the demon binding rope. Nguyen Ho had initially assumed that heavenly maiden Ju Hong's divine arts and magical techniques were mostly related to the way of incense. After all, he had experienced them before. Her ability to produce shamanistic incense that could draw people into a spiritual realm from tens to over 100 miles away. Grave incense that could make ghosts and deities manifest, and commemorative incense that could trace lingering shadows, all clearly demonstrated this point. But at this moment, she suddenly employed a different kind of power. Nguyen Ho was very curious and asked, "What is this demon binding rope?" Heavenly maiden Ju Hong said, "It is an item I received from the Queen Mother of the West in ancient times. A means to control spirits and deities. The divine lords of the 4 seas and 8 deserts all possess similar items. The Taoist sects have the immortal binding rope and the god-whipping cudgel, and the Buddhist sects also have comparable methods. The deity known as the Queen Mother of the West was said to reside in the Kunlun Mountains of the western regions. But quite a few people in the Central Plains also worshipped this divinity. Some said she belonged to the Taoist pantheon, but at a time when Taoism had not yet flourished in the Central Plains. During the Shang and Zhou dynasties, this deity had already been recorded. Regardless of the records, this was an extraordinary divinity. Upon hearing this name, Nguyen Ho felt in his heart that this demon binding rope was surely no ordinary item. Heavenly maiden Ju Hong dismissed her attendants, seemingly having some secrets that could only be shared with Nguyen Ho. "Absolutely not with others, Your Majesty. I am able to control this spiritual realm and become the master of this wondrous paradise thanks to 2 kinds of methods. First, I can use the art of incense to refine vengeful ghosts, transforming them into yaksha divine generals. And I can also use the way of incense to deploy various divine techniques. Second, is this demon binding rope. The former allows me to peacefully be the master of this wondrous paradise, while the latter allows me to attempt to contend for the position of a divine lord, controlling the deities of the 4 directions." Nguyen Ho asked again, "Since it's called the demon binding rope, it should be used to bind demonic entities. What does it have to do with deities?" Heavenly maiden Ju Hong, in ancient times, peculiar and extraordinary beings, those who refused to be governed, were all called demons. The so-called demon binding rope is precisely for binding those peculiar, extraordinary, and ungovernable beings. Heavenly maiden Ju Hong, that incense art for refining spirits is useful against ordinary wandering minor ghosts and spirits, but against true gods who have attained the mysteries of the divine path, there is no way to bind them with it. To truly control these deities, it's like putting a bridle on a horse or a ring through a bull's nose. However, this method cannot be used casually. I can only use it on those whose divine path status is equivalent to mine, or even surpasses mine." Speaking to this point, heavenly maiden Ju Hong seemed a little wistful. "In the past, relying on this demon binding rope technique, I once controlled several malevolent deities with vast divine powers. Unfortunately, once they declined, nothing remained." Once heavenly maiden Ju Hong uttered these words, Nguyen Ho felt even more strongly that this white bone goddess was indeed not simple. And he could also sense heavenly maiden Ju Hong's regard for her. Indeed, if this white bone goddess wasn't important, why would heavenly maiden Ju Hong be so furious? For insignificant minor wandering ghosts, a single edict would suffice. Killing them, scattering their souls, or making them suffer a living death would all be possible. Very quickly, the demon binding rope was brought forth. Heavenly maiden Ju Hong grasped the rope tightly and then closed her eyes. Nguyen Ho watched heavenly maiden Ju Hong muttering incantations. But his attention soon shifted from her gently moving lips to the floral marking on her brow. The heavenly maiden opened her eyes, her curved eyelashes revealing a hint of majesty. Go! With that, she threw the demon binding rope downwards. And Nguyen Ho saw the golden chain transform into a long serpent lunging down. That golden long serpent plunged down and immediately burrowed into the white bone goddess's body. Then quickly wrapped around her. The entirely white-clad white bone goddess fell to the ground, letting out a delicate cry. Ah! Then Nguyen Ho saw the rope gradually merge into the white bone goddess's body, becoming a faint, barely visible, light red line etched onto her skin. Nguyen Ho looked a little closer. This demon binding rope, rather than being a magical artifact, was more like a special technique, or something akin to a curse. It had no true physical form, it seemed formless and intangible yet truly existed. It was just that this thing was too profound, and Nguyen Ho couldn't discern the mysteries within. After implanting the demon binding rope into the white bone goddess's body, heavenly maiden Ju Hong, who was standing shoulder to shoulder with Nguyen Ho on the high platform, moved slightly closer and whispered in his ear, "Your Majesty, I am about to begin chanting the incantation. Your Majesty must memorize this incantation well." At this moment, Nguyen Ho could feel her breath stirring the fine hairs behind his ear. Though his expression remained unchanged, a strange sensation arose in his heart. But looking up from below the celestial palace, the two stood at the highest point, like the divine emperor and heavenly empress looking down upon the entire celestial palace in the spiritual realm. And the white-robed goddess prostrating below the high platform was awaiting the heavenly emperor's punishment. In a fleeting moment, Nguyen Ho had heard the entire verbal command. Then, Ju Hong solemnly instructed him, "Chanting this verbal command allows you to summon and control the deity at will. However, this verbal command must absolutely not be known to a third person. Not even the closest confidant. If someone close by learns it, at best, you will lose your self-defense method and guardian deity, at worst. You will suffer a backlash and lose your life. Also, you must absolutely not believe the sweet words of a deity controlled by the demon-binding rope, thinking you have subdued them and letting your guard down." Nguyen Ho understood that she had truly shared her ultimate trump card with him. And as heavenly maiden Ju Hong chanted that incantation, changes occurred in the white bone goddess below. The demon-binding rope reappeared on her body, tightening around her. The white bone goddess was bound tightly, leaving her no gap to escape. At this time, heavenly maiden Ju Hong questioned from above, "I ask you, what is your method for controlling and refining the donkey elder? I ask you, that horse-faced god. I ask you again." That white bone goddess indeed had her own thoughts. Previously, she had feigned submission, appearing as fragile as if unable to withstand a gust of wind. But in reality, she had other intentions. But at this moment, whenever she had any slight ulterior motive, the demon-binding rope on her body would tighten further. Any lie she uttered would cause a current-like force to transmit from the golden rope, making her tremble incessantly from the shock. Nguyen Ho had intended to observe the power of this demon-binding rope. But looking at the white-robed goddess bound in various ways by the rope, he always felt the image was somewhat improper. However, Ju Hong beside him did not stop. In fact, it could be said she was deliberately toying with the white bone goddess. She intentionally repeated some questions, causing the rope on the already curvaceous figure of the white-robed goddess to tighten even more. She even deliberately chanted incantations, brandishing the Rui scepter in her hand, transforming it into a whip, electrocuting her until she was in a living death. Furthermore, she even intentionally asked some irrelevant questions to test if this white bone goddess had any hidden thoughts, subsequently causing the other party to be continuously tormented by the demon-binding rope. Nguyen Ho felt the time was about right. If this dragged on, that donkey elder might be led away by someone else. Moreover, although the white bone goddess had her own agenda, Nguyen Ho still needed to borrow her power next. His throne as the Son of Heaven was not very stable. He spoke. After all, she was once a deity. There's no need to torture her like this. Heavenly Maiden Ju Hong immediately stopped, causing the demon binding rope to loosen slightly. But it still remained tightly bound around the other party. The white bone goddess showed a grateful expression, repeatedly kowtowing to Heavenly Maiden Ju Hong. Thank you, Divine Lord. Thank you, Divine Lord. The Divine Lord's divine powers are vast. White bone will not dare to have any ulterior motives hereafter, willing to serve the Divine Lord like an ox or a horse. To be the Divine Lord's slave. Heavenly Maiden Ju Hong struck with another magical incantation, causing her to convulse from the electric shock. Why thank me? Hurry and thank His Majesty. The white bone goddess immediately kowtowed repeatedly to Nguyen Ho, but her gaze remained fixed on Heavenly Maiden Ju Hong on the high platform. Her eyes filled with reverence and fear, yet carrying a strong trace of adoration and fawning. Nguyen Ho discovered that this white bone goddess had some serious issues. Whoever abused her, she would fawn over them more. Whoever acted high and mighty before her, holding the power of life and death, she would adore them more. Heavenly Maiden Ju Hong snorted coldly and whipped down twice more with electric force. Crack, crack, ah, ah. The white bone goddess below let out two delicate moans. But by her appearance, she had completely submitted. After subduing this white bone goddess, Heavenly Maiden Ju Hong said to Nguyen Ho, Your Majesty, the divine path is not like the mortal world. This white bone goddess cannot be compared to Your Majesty's subjects. The carrot and stick approach is ineffective. Most of these ghosts and deities do not understand gratitude or virtue. Nor do they know anything about rights, laws, or morality. They only recognize supreme divine power, heaven-defying techniques. The more you make them suffer a living death, the less they dare to have any ill intentions. If you reveal any flaw or weakness, they will immediately seize the opportunity. Nguyen Ho nodded slightly, indicating he had learned. If in the mortal world, the power disparity between people was not yet a world apart, and a set of moral codes, rights, laws, and order was still needed among people to maintain the stability of the human realm, then in this world of ghosts and deities, because the power disparity between them had reached an unimaginable degree, what maintained order was not any morality, rights, or laws, but naked divine power and strength. Then, Heavenly Maiden Ju Hong took out that Ruyi scepter and handed it to Nguyen Ho. Nguyen Ho was stunned, then thought of the technique Heavenly Maiden Ju Hong had just used, whipping the white-robed goddess with the electric Ruyi until she moaned delicately without end. Was this to let him make a move? That didn't seem quite right. Did it? Heavenly Maiden Ju Hong. Later, the white bone goddess will use mortal rituals and ceremonies to contact that donkey elder. In a moment, Your Majesty's consciousness will enter Mount Feng Huang with her to lead that donkey elder down the mountain. If that white bone goddess makes any unusual moves, besides chanting the incantation, Your Majesty can also use this item to deal with her. Nguyen Ho nodded. Ah. So that's how it is. Chapter Mo in the mortal realm. Inside the City King Temple. At this very moment, Nguyen Ho was standing before the ancestral tablet on the altar. The incense stick in his hand had only burned a short way. To others, the Son of Heaven was merely standing before the divine tablet for a while, seemingly reporting worldly affairs to the deities in the high heavens. Nguyen Ho opened his eyes, his consciousness returning once more to the mortal realm. He turned around and ordered the long-prepared sacrificial ceremony to the gods to begin. The time has come. Delay no longer. Nguyen Ho couldn't help but feel anxious, even though he didn't know exactly where that horse-faced god was at the moment. However, there's a saying, quick hands get, slow hands lose. A little delay, and the prize might fall into someone else's hands. If that Lord Horse King were a bit more ruthless, acting on the thought of eliminating all those old donkeys, it would be even more difficult for Nguyen Ho to find this rare demonic breed. As soon as the Son of Heaven gave the order, a grand sacrificial ceremony to the gods commenced both inside and outside the entire City King Temple. the method of worship, the arrangement of the sacrificial altar. All were set up according to the words of the white bone goddess. It was just the local Wu Shi shamans chanting incantations and performing exorcism dances. Yet they still retained some inherited memories from ancient times. Night fell. The world of ghosts and gods replaced the world of ordinary people, in the darkness. Unimaginable things seemed to begin disturbing the mortal realm. Beneath a large bonfire, the Wu Shi shamans inscribed characters onto pieces of bone, then threw those bones into the fire. Roar! The great fire blazed fiercely, erupting with waves of embers that flew far and scattered all around. Afterward, the group of Wu Shi shamans also split up. Some recited sacrificial texts. Some played divine music, and others danced. Nguyen Ho sat upright in the City King Temple, listening to the Wu Shi shamans recite the incantations, which sounded like a mix of chanting and singing, and with the hypnotic sound of the incantations and the exorcism dances. Nguyen Ho faintly heard calls from beyond the boundary of yin and yang. "Your Majesty, Your Majesty." Nguyen Ho seemed to smell the fragrance of Xingwu incense, and his spirit once again soared. He immediately recalled matters related to this Xingwu incense. It was the first gift the myriad fragrance celestial maiden had given him. Initially, Nguyen Ho had only been told the name of the Xingwu incense by the myriad fragrance celestial maiden. Later, he learned that this type of incense had been recorded in texts. Legend has it that during the time of Emperor Wu of Han, the deceased Lady Li once relied on this Xingwu incense to have her spirit return and meet Emperor Wu. This was an incense proven to be able to communicate with ghosts and gods. When his consciousness cleared, he found himself in a dark, obscure region. The Ruyi scepter, normally invisible in the mortal realm, was now in his hand. Nguyen Ho raised the light-emitting Ruyi scepter high, illuminating the darkness. At this moment, a figure glided past him. "Your Majesty, it is time to depart." "Nguyen Ho, how do we go?" "The white bone goddess, Your Majesty. Please come with this servant." The white bone goddess took Nguyen Ho's hand and flew upwards. In the domain of ghosts and gods, people seemed as light as feathers. Yet some inconspicuous things were as heavy as 1,000 caddies. More importantly, the gentle breezes of the mortal world inexplicably became incredibly strong and fierce upon entering the world of ghosts and gods. But at this moment, Nguyen Ho thought perhaps it was just that the wind was a bit stronger tonight. Whoosh! Nguyen Ho held the white bone goddess by the waist, especially as she tilted her head back to fly. Her neck appeared even more slender, reminding one of a white crane. The night wind billowed the white bone goddess's robes, and Nguyen Ho immediately felt his body enveloped by layers of fluttering white fabric. The soft, fragrant hem of her robe made Nguyen Ho feel as if the bone-chilling wind had been blocked. The white bone goddess, holding Nguyen Ho and seemingly supporting him, flew towards the distance. Thus, his spirit journeyed to Phoenix Crest Mountain. A long while later, Nguyen Ho, "Are we at Phoenix Crest Mountain now?" The white bone goddess, indeed. Not quite like Nguyen Ho had imagined. He still couldn't see anything around, it was just pitch black. The order of the yin and yang realms was entirely different. What mortals and spirits could see were completely distinct. And both mortals and spirits had their own weaknesses. What mortals could see, spirits might not necessarily see. What mortals could do, spirits might not necessarily be able to do. Nguyen Ho gained another layer of understanding regarding the limitations of ghosts and gods. However, this aimless flight only lasted for a short while. Very quickly, Nguyen Ho saw something else. But he heard a sound first before he spotted them. Hee-haw, hee-haw. A herd of donkeys with long, dense white manes traversed the hazy mountain ranges in the darkness, creating an imposing aura like that of a heavenly army of thousands. In the eyes of the living in the Yang realm, perhaps those mountain ranges were the most majestic and imposing, while the herd of donkeys was merely a dependent creature dwelling amidst the layered peaks. But from the perspective of ghosts and gods, those old donkeys emitted a faint, mystical light, making them incredibly conspicuous amidst the gloomy landscape. Nguyen Ho looked closely at the herd of donkeys. These donkeys were even taller than ordinary warhorses, appearing exceptionally majestic and handsome. At first glance, they didn't look like donkeys at all, they were clearly horses. And the distinct, jet-black bodies of the old donkeys further revealed an extraordinary, demonic aura. Nguyen Ho rejoiced inwardly, found them. But the white bone goddess showed a look of fear. Oh no. The Lord King is also here. Lord Horse King, who was also the horse-faced god. After colluding with the Ring Hand tribe to plot a grand scheme, he ended up almost being schemed against by others. He had fled straight westward, escaping through the earth towards the Phoenix Crest mountain range. Although he had abandoned all his assets, his nether earth god manor, and even the white bone goddess to that Nguyen brat, the horse-faced god still couldn't bear to part with this herd of old donkeys. Especially when his remaining trump cards and capital amounted to nothing. Even now, he still harbored the illusion that he could use this herd of old donkeys to wedge himself into the grand scheme of the world during these chaotic times. Unwilling to give up that dream, why can't this eminence assume the position of a regional divine master, and sit upon that grand emperor's divine throne? At this very moment, he was herding this drove of old donkeys straight through the mountain ranges, heading west. Once he reached the west, even though the horse-faced god lacked the white bone goddess and thus had no way to refine the donkey army again, he still had methods to keep this herd of old donkeys from being snatched by others. At a crucial moment, perhaps they could be sold for a good price, and this would also become the new trump card for his resurgence. Unexpectedly, however, a Cheng Yaojin jumped out midway. Nguyen Ho saw that horse-faced god, and that horse-faced god also saw him. At this very moment, amidst the mountain ranges, now just hazy silhouettes in the darkness, the horse-faced god, in human form, rode atop a leading old donkey. And high in the sky, the white-robed goddess with her fluttering white robes and skirt soared above the mountain range. In Nguyen Ho's eyes, he was being carried by her as she flew. But looking up from below, Nguyen Ho, holding the white-robed goddess by the waist, pressed close against her, appearing as if he were riding her. Their four eyes met, and in that instant, the most intense sparks flew. Nguyen Ho was still rejoicing at having smoothly found the herd of old donkeys and was inwardly admiring their majestic appearance, only to frown in an instant when he saw that horse-faced god. If he had been a moment later, Nguyen Ho feared he would have truly missed the chance with this herd of old donkeys. Nguyen Ho frowned, yet at the same time, he felt a touch of luck. But it was a different story for the horse-faced god on the other side. The horse-faced god, who had been leisurely and carefree, even humming a tune, looked up and immediately saw Nguyen Ho, riding the white bone goddess, flying towards him. At this very moment, the other party was still embracing the white-robed goddess. Soaring through the sky, the horse-faced god's hair stood on end, knocking off his golden coronet. His single, mystical eye on his forehead instantly streamed black, bloody tears, while his other two eyes seemed to blaze furiously. At this moment, even Gagong smashing Mount Bujo would hardly capture the cataclysmic upheaval in his heart upon seeing this scene. The sight of the celestial river surging down from the 9 heavens, submerging the 4 seas and 8 wildernesses back then, could hardly describe the towering rage in his heart. He swayed his body like a crazed cobra rearing its head to the sky, a hiss-like roar escaping his mouth. Beast. Kak Ban Dang Nghe Trian Demon Emperor Thai Great Dragon Audio Channel Chapter Hai Nguyen Ho had initially come to act as a waypoint, to guide this old donkey out from the deep, overlapping mountains of Phong Hoang Mountain to Tam County, which lay before him. Yet, unexpectedly, as fate would have it with enemies, he ran right into Ma Dien Than. But the even greater problem was Bok County Than. In the sky, that white-robed goddess appeared, utterly ashamed. Nguyen Ho looked at her. Ma Dien Than also looked at her, while she covered her face with her hands, not daring to descend. This wasn't even the main issue for Nguyen Ho. The greater nuisance was that she was idly watching Ma Dien Than lead that old donkey away. He, Nguyen Ho, and this Ma Dien then were mortal enemies. If he allowed Ma Dien then to lead this old donkey away, in the immediate future, his plans would be severely impacted. In the long run, it was possible that the seeds of his downfall were being sown at this very moment. Bok County then flew faster and faster, seemingly to avoid Ma Dien then's gaze. On one hand, she pursued the galloping herd of old donkeys. On the other, she used the darkness of the forest to conceal her figure. But from any angle, it was clearly a self-deceiving act. Ma Dien then had long known she was behind him. And by looking up, Ma Dien then could see her even more clearly. She, beneath the night sky, her body was emitting a white divine aura. But this awkward and uncomfortable display of shame from her also compelled Nguyen Ho to hold her firmly, to steady his own form, and to steady her as well. He asked, "I have heard that you were once a deity captured by Ma Dien Than. In ordinary times, within this County Tan kingdom, you were regarded as a regional power, the principal deity of a nation. Logically speaking, why would you submit to that Ma Dien Than's constraints, even if his divine powers are usually stronger than yours? Now that he's become a defeated cur, what else is there for you to fear?" As Nguyen Ho spoke, he pulled away the delicate hand Bok County then used to cover her face, peered at her intently, and asked if she intended to betray him. Quote, "What are your intentions?" Bok County then's eyes darted away. But she finally spoke, "Not exactly. The prince is bloodthirsty and vicious. He usually either beat or cursed me, ordering me around at his whim. And it was he who sacrificed me alive in the western city back then." The truth of the matter far surpassed Nguyen Ho's expectations. Nguyen Ho knew that besides the rumors of Bok County then's origins in County Tan Kingdom, one tale spoke of her being a woman from the Han dynasty. He had never imagined she was actually sacrificed alive by Prince Ma. Furthermore, the method of live sacrifice was exceedingly cruel. However, from what Bok County then said, the matter wasn't that straightforward. That Prince Ma's method of live sacrifice not only controlled her but, more critically, could allow the sacrificial offering to replace Bok County Than, this very deity. Yet, at this moment, Nguyen Ho wasn't focused on these details or the enigma behind this past event. He merely found it peculiar. Logically, this Bok County Than and that Prince Ma should be mortal enemies. So why was she putting on this act of unbearable shame? Shouldn't she seize the opportunity of his weakness to demand his life? Nguyen Ho, then why are you acting like this? Bok County then whispered. Prince Ma is ferocious, so I dare not approach. Her voice was like the chirping of an insect, so faint it was barely audible. Nguyen Ho was astonished. He had been mistaken. This Bok County then wasn't acting out of shame at all. His supposed understanding of this woman's, or rather, this goddess's thoughts, was completely off. He understood nothing. Nguyen Ho, you fear him. But do you not fear me? Do you not fear the master of that wondrous music paradise? Our methods are immeasurably more potent than Ma Dien Than's, are we not? Therefore, even more ruthless? Bok County then instantly showed hesitation but remained motionless. Meanwhile, Ma Dien Than, riding the old donkey beneath the night sky, began to bellow, "Animal! Animal!" Ma Dien then hurled abuses at Nguyen Ho. But Nguyen Ho paid him no heed, acting as he wished. He even appeared to be intimately conversing with Bok County then right before Ma Dien Than's eyes, whispering private words. Ma Dien then could not see clearly from afar, nor could he hear what the two were saying. He could only speculate. And the deeper he delved into his thoughts, the more he conjured scenarios that were unbearable for him. Just then, Ma Dien then saw Nguyen Ho pull away the hand Bok County then was using to shield her face. Although Nguyen Ho was clearly interrogating Bok County then sternly, in Ma Dien Than's eyes, it appeared as if Nguyen Ho was dishonoring her right before him. Nguyen Ho's stern expression transformed into a lecherous grin in his perception. "Unhand her. Stop it, you animal. Stop it now." However, Ma Dien then was powerless against Nguyen Ho, capable only of helpless rage. Consequently, this malevolent deity immediately vented his fury upon Bok County Than. "Bok Company, what are you doing here? Do you dare betray me? having fallen into the enemy's clutches. Why didn't you commit suicide immediately? How can you still bear to live? Do you intend to hand over the old donkey to that Nguyen whelp? He's merely a mortal. How long can he possibly live? Ultimately, the day will come when you fall into my hands once more. Bok County then was terrified, not daring to confront the malevolent deity who had caused her demise and subsequently enslaved and tormented her. It's not I haven't. Ma Deen then furiously berated her, commanding Bok County then, get down here at once and kill that Nguyen whelp for me. Bok County then's resolve wavered, as if Ma Deen then's words were an irresistible incantation. Upon hearing them, she felt compelled to obey. Ma Deen then, fiercely enraged, leapt up and down on the ground, as impatient and agitated as a large ape. Hurry, hurry, come down here this instant and exterminate that Nguyen whelp for me. Bok County then, as if truly bewitched, actually began to slowly descend from the sky towards the ground. Seeing Bok County then drawing closer to the ground inch by inch, the celestial maiden Ju Hong truly saw through this Bok Ko. This kind of spirit deity truly fears might, not virtue. Seeing Bok County then's behavior, Nguyen Ho prepared to activate the incantation for the demon binding rope that Ju Hong had placed upon her. Since this Bok County then yielded to malevolence, Nguyen Ho would show her just how ferocious he himself could be. If he wanted Bok County then to break free from Ma Deen then's control, he had to make her perceive him as even more ruthless and malevolent than Ma Deen than. The moment he chanted the demon binding rope incantation, golden rays of light instantly appeared on Bok County then's skin. Then, a golden chain coiled around Bok County then's slender form, constricting her tightly, binding her securely. Bok County then, who had been descending like a celestial maiden gracing the mortal realm, and Ma Deen than, mounted on the lead old donkey, seeing this, looked ecstatic and reached upwards. Quickly, come down to me, I am the true God. How can that Nguyen whelp, a mere mortal, compare to me? Suddenly, Bok County then's body froze, and she let out a soft moan. Her shoulders jerked backward as if someone had yanked her, pulling her back. Nguyen Ho formed a hand seal with one hand and then bellowed at Bok County than, ascend, and Bok County then immediately complied, soaring back into the sky. Viewed from below, it appeared as if Nguyen Ho was pulling Bok County then back upwards. Prince Ma, mounted on the tall old donkey, his face instantly changed color, while Bok County then also wore an expression of anguish. Not only that, but Nguyen Ho also produced another item given to him by the celestial maiden Ju Hong. Holding a jade ruyi scepter, he silently recited an incantation and began to punish Bok County then for her recent attempt at rebellion. In an instant, waves of light pulsed along the demon binding rope. Crack, SSSZZZ. Bok County then trembled from head to toe. Nguyen Ho, holding the jade ruyi, coldly commanded Bok County than, Bok Company heed my order. Quickly, summon the old donkey. Bok County then had no choice but to ascend into the sky once more, and could only obey Nguyen Ho's command. Because now, Nguyen Ho appeared even more ruthless, even more ferocious. She could only obey him, offering words of apology to Prince Ma below. However, to demonstrate that she had no other choice, as Bok County then ascended, she cried out to the one below, "Ah, no, Your Highness." Prince Ma watched, aghast, Nguyen Ho's wanton and tyrannical actions, and tilting his head to the sky, he let out a long, furious roar. Nguyen Ho, chapter Ba following Bok Ko. Then as she flew up again, the white hem of her robe was tossed about by the wind, her two sleeves flailing chaotically, continuously brushing against Nguyen Ho's face and arms. Nguyen Ho held Bok Ko then, looking down from above, taking everything into his sight, seeing clearly, truthfully. He really didn't understand what kind of bizarre charade these two were putting on. The cowherd and the weaver girl? Or Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingtai? One, a cruel, tyrannical, and vicious evil deity, had personally, in an extremely brutal manner, harmed and killed that girl, and even enslaved her. usually either beating or cursing her. Now, when she had escaped her shackles, not only was he unafraid of retaliation, but on the contrary, he acted all high and mighty, giving orders. The other, who clearly had a deep-seated blood feud with him, instead of taking this moment to finish him off, was here putting on some act of profound affection as vast as the sea. Thinking of this, Nguyen Ho's eyebrows furrowed tightly into a wavy line. He had encountered strange and peculiar individuals before, but these two deities were even more bizarre than ordinary mortals. These two damnable deities, both deserved a good whipping. Smack, smack. Nguyen Ho no longer held back, raising Ruyi again, and two electric lashes struck Bok Ko Than. Bok Ko then convulsed continuously from the electric shock. Then her movements quickened, and she swiftly flew to a safe position. Far from the ground, the more vicious Nguyen Ho was, the more fiercely he whipped her, and the more obedient and compliant she became. Moreover, Nguyen Ho didn't sense any resentment or hostility emanating from her at all. This made it impossible for Nguyen Ho to understand. He was somewhat unclear what kind of logic this was. Finally, he could only utter one sentence. It's still Celestial Maiden Du Hong who is truly knowledgeable. At this moment, recalling Celestial Maiden Du Hong's words about how to deal with Bok Ko Than, he increasingly felt they were indeed golden words of wisdom. Nguyen Ho, seeing Bok Ko Than dilly-dallying, applied a bit more force, ordering her to quickly summon the old donkeys. Bok Ko then wiped her tears, flying and circling in the sky. Your Highness, I have no other choice. Ah, don't blame me, she wailed and cried miserably while casting the spell. And when Nguyen Ho chanted the incantation for the demon binding rope, that demon binding rope not only bound Bok Ko Than, at the same time, it also transmitted some of the thoughts in Bok Ko Than's mind. It was precisely thanks to this special technique from Celestial Maiden Du Hong that Nguyen Ho was able to probe a fraction of Bok Ko Than's inner thoughts. Completely unlike the resentful, helpless, and desperate appearance she showed on the surface, her inner thoughts were an entirely different stream. This Bok Ko Than is acting like this, not because she's resentful or reluctant, but to put on a show for that Ma Vong Jia. In her view, only by acting this way would Ma Vong Jia not dare to hold her responsible for it. And later he also wouldn't dare to punish her, because the evildoer is entirely me. No, she's acting. It seems she's gotten too into character. She genuinely feels aggrieved and helpless. What is she imagining now? Is she continuously painting me in her mind as an even more evil, more perverted, more irresistible figure? The more terrifying she imagines me to be, the more justified her inability to resist me becomes? Nguyen Ho sensed Bok Ko Than's peculiar line of thought, not knowing how to describe it, but he fully cooperated with Bok Ko Than's dramatic train of thought, vigorously whipping her to make her excuse of compliance unbreakable. Quickly cast the spell. Don't drag it out any longer. The goddess's expression became even more anguished. But Nguyen Ho, through the demon binding rope, didn't sense any resistance or inner turmoil from her. On the contrary, he sensed that when his attitude became stricter, his expression colder, the other party became even more stimulated. She became more engrossed in playing the role of an abused character. The more she was harmed, the more elated she became. Later, Nguyen Ho even stopped using the Ruyi Jade to urge her, and the punishing actions also ceased. But then, a strange thing happened next. On one side, Nguyen Ho felt it was enough, so he stopped his actions. After all, she was a deity of a certain domain, and moreover, there would be many matters in the future requiring her assistance. He instinctively felt he shouldn't overdo it. On the other side, Bok Ko Than's inner thoughts transmitted a feeling of dissatisfaction. Immediately after, Bok Ko then continued to writhe under Nguyen Ho's supposed control, displaying an appearance of being continuously harmed by him, and even intensifying it layer by layer. Your Highness, save me, quickly save me, Your Highness. It looked incredibly real. That pained and helpless expression didn't seem fake at all. Nguyen Ho was stunned. He looked at the Ruyi in his hand. touched his own lips. Neither had made any movement. He then suspected whether this spell of his had gone out of control, otherwise. Why would she be afflicted by the curse when he hadn't even chanted the incantation? He had only lightly used the spell to punish her 3 times. Yet she acted as if Nguyen Ho had whipped her at least dozens of times. Each lash heavier than the last. Suffering pain as if dying and reviving. Meanwhile, below, Ma Vong Jia, seeing this scene, his eyes looked as if they were about to split. Stop it, I tell you. At this very moment, within the land of ghosts and gods where yin and yang intersected, such a scene was unfolding. In the sky, the fairy-like goddess was wailing mournfully under the fiend's hands, on the ground. The tall, horse-faced man was cursing the blue sky for his unjust fate. The sole villain was none other than Nguyen Ho. Nguyen Ho seemed like a terrible fiend. All the vicious characters on a stage combined, at this moment, seemed not even a tenth as heinous as him. It's just that, at this moment, the heinous fiend Nguyen Ho was staring blankly down below. A bewildered look clear on his face. He hadn't done anything, yet this bizarre play seemed to be automatically driven by some powerful force. Continuing to unfold. What is this situation? Nguyen Ho. He considered himself capable of being vicious, even wicked to the point of making people hate him with gnashing teeth. But, not this kind of wickedness. He was an arbitrary, ferocious demon, not a pervert, but this no longer mattered. Finally, under the fiend's humiliation and coercion, Bok Ko then unleashed all the spells to control the old donkeys. Streams of magical light, like shackles, poured into the bodies of the herd of old donkeys below, after which the entire herd cried out in unison. The rhythm of their dense, mountainous trek was suddenly broken, and the entire herd of donkeys fell into chaos. Clatter. That horse-faced deity immediately couldn't control the old donkey beneath his saddle and tumbled to the ground. And the herd of donkeys also changed direction, preparing to alter their course. Ma Vong Jia immediately turned and chased after that herd of donkeys. He roared loudly, "My donkeys! My donkeys! Those are my donkeys!" However, at this moment, Nguyen Ho immediately ordered Bok Ko Than, "Quick, make the old donkeys devour that horse-faced deity." In the end, Bok Ko then looked down and said, "Your Highness, flee quickly." However, her hand did not hesitate in the slightest as she ordered the old donkeys to devour that horse-faced deity. Because the heinous fiend Nguyen Ho had given the order, if she didn't act immediately, that fiend would certainly continue to humiliate her in all sorts of ways. However, this Ma Vong Jia knew the old donkeys very well. Nguyen Ho wanting to use the same old trick to deal with him was indeed too simplistic a thought. Seeing the situation was not good, he immediately fled, although Nguyen Ho wanted to deal with him. Unfortunately, he and the other party were worlds apart. Separated by layers of mountain ranges, a hasty confrontation was still something he was unprepared for. However, Nguyen Ho immediately shifted his gaze to the old donkeys. Bringing them back was the most important thing now. Thump 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 thump, the old donkeys changed direction, kicking up dust in the mountain range, heading out of the mountains, escaping from Phong Hoang Mountain, above Sao Land to the west. Continuing westward from this place, one could see Bok Ma Sao Thien in the distance. The horse-faced deity finally revealed his form, clinging to a dilapidated shrine made of bones, enduring the lashing wind and pouring rain. As soon as he showed his head, he roared furiously, "I am filled with such hatred. Such hatred. Nguyen Ho, you dog thief." The horse-faced deity, who had lived for an unknown number of years, for the first time revealed such hatred towards a person, hating that he couldn't flay his skin and eat his flesh. "Nguyen Ho, I cannot live under the same sky as you. I swear I will kill you. If I break this vow, may heaven strike me down and the earth swallow me whole." Kak Ban Dang Nghe Trian Demon Emperor Tai Great Dragon Audio Channel Chapter Bond. 2 figures flew through the sky. Below them, wave upon wave of beasts surged endlessly. The woman, her long white skirt trailing behind her, extended a hand forward, probing, "Your Majesty, I must be faster. Nguyen Ho, who had been holding her, loosened his grip slightly. It seemed he was no longer holding her tightly, but rather, they were flying side by side. Their expressions were somewhat hurried, and Bok County then voiced the reason. We can't. Daybreak is near. Nguyen Ho had to return to his body before dawn, or there would be problems. But honestly, when Nguyen Ho looked up, he couldn't see any sign or trace of impending dawn. However, Nguyen Ho knew this was due to the difference between the realms of yin and yang, and also because of the difference in vision between demonic beings and living humans. He asked, "What should we do now?" Bok County said, "Your Majesty should return first. Your servant will latch onto this silver-headed donkey and lead them to find you." Nguyen Ho looked deeply at Bok County for a moment. His first reaction was that this Bok County spirit intended to lead the silver-headed donkeys away and escape. Tam County. Outside the King Ton Temple, Vu Hitch had been conducting the grand sacrificial ceremony all night. The Nuo dance, with its grotesque masks, had long since ended, but the bonfires were not yet extinguished. People continuously added firewood. Additionally, a group of people was still ringing bells, chanting scriptures, and beating drums, because the Son of Heaven inside the temple was still sitting cross-legged in the main hall, performing the Qian Xin ritual of offering to the gods. The emperor had not declared an end, so how could the crowd dare to disperse? In the courtyard, some accompanying officials had also been sitting all night. Many were yawning, and some had already dozed off. "Ah, what's wrong? It's already dawn. Has His Majesty come out yet?" Everyone was finding it a bit unbearable. But the Son of Heaven remained motionless inside, his back visible to all, his physique growing increasingly robust. Like a prized steed, like a hunting leopard, it seems the Son of Heaven's reverence for the divine is truly steadfast. This Bok County spirit, what kind of deity is it exactly? Have you all heard of it before? Never heard of it. They had initially thought that the Son of Heaven had merely heard somewhere that there was a deity here called Bok Company and so had come to offer worship. But now, it seemed it wasn't that simple. However, they still had no clear idea what Nguyen Ho was ultimately trying to achieve. Of course, quite a few people believed Nguyen Ho was putting on a mystical charade. Or perhaps, it was because of the recent series of demonic disturbances that he was desperately seeking aid from gods and demons everywhere. Secretly, many were still discussing the incident that had occurred at the imperial mausoleum. Recently, both within and outside the court, demonic disturbances have been frequent. Even the late emperor's tomb hasn't been spared. What is the reason for this? It seems His Majesty is also worried about this. Hence his special trip here to beseech the gods and demons for protection. It's not that simple. Previously, the Six Heavens Palace possessed a divine artifact that pacified the world. Yet His Majesty insisted on punishing the mountains and destroying the temples of the underworld gods. Now that it has come to this, I think, in my opinion, the Son of Heaven should invite the underworld gods back. How can this commotion continue indefinitely? The influence of the Hell Dao sect in the western part of the city was comprehensive. Nguyen Ho had forcibly dismantled the beliefs and temples of the underworld gods belonging to the Hell Dao. Many people, though not showing it outwardly, were deeply dissatisfied in their hearts. Now, seeing the demonic disturbances, they began to gloat over his misfortune, waiting to see what fate would befall the Son of Heaven. As the red sun rose from the east, Nguyen Ho also promptly awoke. Upon waking, Nguyen Ho immediately looked towards the Phong Hoang mountain range. He frowned, seemingly with a hint of worry. After Nguyen Ho stood up and walked out, the people outside began to move one after another. Though not in perfect order, they all saluted in unison. "Your Majesty, Your Majesty." Nguyen Ho looked out and informed everyone of the results of his night-long communion with the Bok County spirit. Quote, "We just had a dream. Dreaming of silver-headed, black-bodied prized horses descending from the highlands. I wonder if any of our beloved ministers can interpret dreams?" The crowd buzzed with discussion, but still didn't quite understand what Nguyen Ho's dream meant. Or rather, what was Nguyen Ho's purpose in saying this? Nguyen Ho didn't say much more. merely leading his men away from the King Tan temple and back to the imperial guesthouse. However, by the afternoon, Nguyen Ho's dream about the white horses descending from the highlands had come true. At the foot of Phong Hoang Mountain, a great commotion suddenly erupted. Rumble, rumble, thump, 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 thump. The ground itself seemed to tremble. With a chaotic rhythm, looking up, flocks of birds flew from the mountains high into the sky. Circling above, chirp, 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 a large herd of horses charged down from the mountain. Arriving at a plain outside Tam County, they had run for a whole day and night, and now they suddenly stopped, then leisurely grazed on the grass of this plain. This news immediately alarmed the officials and people of Tam County, and of course, the Son of Heaven and the civil and military officials who were staying there. The crowd hurried to see. From a distance, those animals looked like horses, each one tall and majestic, their builds even larger than ordinary warhorses. It was just that their heads were white and their bodies black. A very strange appearance, as if two different species had been pieced together. But upon closer inspection, the crowd discovered that these horses were a bit off. Not right, not right. These are donkeys. How can that be? Don't you try to fool me. This official has seen donkeys before. Where in the world would there be such large donkeys? Perhaps, but these are indeed donkeys? Some began to argue, debating whether these creatures were horses or donkeys. Others immediately recalled what the Son of Heaven had said earlier. An official looked at these hybrid creatures, unsure if they were horses or donkeys, then suddenly turned and asked everyone, "Do you all remember what His Majesty said at the King Tan temple early this morning?" The others also reacted, exclaiming one after another, "Of course, I remember clearly. His Majesty said he dreamt of prized horses with silver heads and black bodies entering his dream. The white horses His Majesty spoke of. Could they be these things? They've really arrived. Strange. Could it be that these creatures were sent by a deity? The Son of Heaven spoke of horses in the early morning. And by the afternoon, the horses were delivered. If one said there was no connection, the others wouldn't believe it. And at this moment, Nguyen Ho had also arrived, personally inspecting the fine mounts he had acquired with such difficulty. Looking down from above onto the grassland, there were roughly 3,000 to 4,000 of them. Subtracting a portion, the number usable as warhorses for soldiers to ride would still be over 1,000. Even forming a small cavalry unit would be temporarily sufficient. Not to mention these were hybrid breeds. Seeing this, Nguyen Ho nodded and said, quote, "Indeed, they have truly been delivered to us." Nguyen Ho was pleased that the Bach County spirit had not betrayed him at the last moment, but had obediently delivered the silver-headed donkeys. But in the eyes of the court officials, this was a matter of Nguyen Ho's dream coming true. The Son of Heaven himself already possessed a deified aura at this moment. In everyone's eyes, Nguyen Ho was truly being aided by gods and demons. Immediately, someone stepped forward to sing praises and eulogize his virtues. It is said that the sage kings of old all had divine assistance. It must be that the deity knew our great Sheng's enlightened sage lord had graced this place, and thus specially came to aid your majesty. Congratulations, your majesty. Congratulations, master of the 9 provinces. Ordained by the mandate of heaven, protected by the gods. Nguyen Ho did not expose the truth. Although this one event might seem insignificant, sometimes the prestige and authority of the Son of Heaven were accumulated bit by bit like this, even if these people were laying on the flattery a bit thick. Nguyen Ho also vaguely understood why the previous Son of Heaven had possessed such inexplicable confidence. Nguyen Ho ordered his men to gather all the silver-headed donkeys, preparing to hand them over to the imperial stables. These silver-headed donkeys would undoubtedly become an important force under his command. Chapter Nam. At night, Nguyen Ho stood under the curved eaves of the small courtyard in the guest house, looking at a silver-furred donkey tethered in the yard. It was unknown whether the silver-furred donkey recognized Nguyen Ho as the figure who had held the white maiden goddess in the sky earlier, or if it was for some other reason. It stood obediently in place, unmoving, only occasionally snorting and flicking its tail. HMPH. HMPH. The mirror of illusions and reality flashed. And the room behind Nguyen Ho also lit up. Light and shadows overlapping and casting onto the door. But when looking into the room with the naked eye, for some reason, though the lights were clearly on, the inside seemed even darker, making it impossible to see clearly even if one rubbed their eyes. A figure emerged from the hazy scene, knelt behind Nguyen Ho, and called out, "Your Majesty." During the day, when the silver-furred donkey returned, the white maiden goddess was not seen. Now, as night fell, she finally appeared. Nguyen Ho turned, his gaze piercing through the torchlight to look at the goddess prostrating herself at the foot of the steps. Compared to when he first met her, she seemed to have changed somewhat. If one were to say, the first time he saw her, she was wailing miserably, punished by the Miao Shang heavenly maiden, forced by the Miao Shang heavenly maiden to serve as a handmaiden in the mirror spirit realm. But at this moment, her state of mind was different. The reason she prostrated herself here so obediently, it was solely because of Nguyen Ho. She was timid and fearful, still maintaining a distance from Nguyen Ho. When she looked up, she was like a white deer in the forest gazing at the mountain lord before her. And in her mind, she recalled the scene from the previous night. She remembered Nguyen Ho, casually punishing her to the brink of death and back, right in front of the horse-faced god, making it impossible for her to ever hold her head high before the horse-faced god again. Such viciousness and brutality, to the extent that the horse-faced god, he who led man-eating beasts, was like a helpless toad on the ground before him, craning its neck to the sky and shrieking in a mad, futile rage, utterly unable to intervene. Comparing the two, the brutal image of Lord Horse, originally deeply ingrained in her heart, had, in a single night, transferred to Nguyen Ho. Therefore, when she saw Nguyen Ho turn his head, the very instant their eyes met, her entire body went limp. Nguyen Ho, at this moment, still didn't quite understand what's wrong. As a demon, it was difficult for him to comprehend this kind of thinking from the white maiden goddess. He had merely recited a controlling incantation because the white maiden goddess had intended to betray him. How could that be more brutal than the horse-faced god, who had used her as a living sacrifice? The white maiden goddess lay prostrate on the ground, her posture so humble it was as if she had merged with the dust. But this posture, from Nguyen Ho's perspective, made her already proud figure even more prominent, like a pippa made of flesh with exaggerated curves. "Your Majesty, the silver-furred donkey, this servant has summoned it back, awaiting your Majesty's command." Nguyen Ho looked at her. "You didn't think of running away?" After saying this, he added in a questioning tone, The white maiden's body trembled. "Ah, your Majesty, this servant wouldn't dare." "Nguyen Ho, weren't you planning to take the silver-furred donkey to help that horse-faced god?" The white maiden, "Your Majesty's divine might. Even Lord Horse could not withstand it. How would this servant dare betray Lord Horse?" Nguyen Ho understood, because his own ferocity had been proven last night to surpass Lord Horse's. Lord Horse's cruelty now amounted to nothing. It seemed that last night's events had indeed subdued the white maiden goddess. But Nguyen Ho had to maintain this image of being even more ferocious, even more brutal. At the same time, he had to possess the means to control her at all times, and moreover, be able to inflict upon her harm far exceeding anyone else, and also frequently remind her of the terror of those means. Humans and gods, they are not the same. Thinking of this, Nguyen Ho recalled the words of the Miao Shang heavenly maiden. But on reflection, it seemed there were similarities between humans and gods. It was just that the way of humans was somewhat more ambiguous, while in the divine law, this was expressed more clearly and directly. These deities also revered this kind of violent law even more. Nguyen Ho stopped looking at the white maiden goddess, his gaze shifting to the silver-furred donkey outside. It was also time to prepare for refining the donkey soldiers. The name, donkey soldiers, was a folk term in the past. They had another name, fully called the Shen Zhou army. "Tell me, what is so miraculous about this Shen Zhou army?" The white maiden goddess told Nguyen Ho that this breed of silver-furred donkey excelled at night raids. In ancient times, the Shenzhou army often marched 1,000 li at night, traceless as ghosts. The enemy often perished before even understanding the situation, which was how the Shenzhou army gained such renown during the prosperous era of the Great Shang dynasty. Nguyen Ho. Night raids? Nguyen Ho hadn't considered this point before. At this moment, he suddenly recalled last night, how that large herd of silver-furred donkeys had moved freely throughout the mountainous region in the dark. This was indeed an extremely potent talent, but it was merely a talent. Nguyen Ho felt that this Shenzhou army shouldn't be so simple. Is there anything else? The White Maiden Goddess said. Other divine abilities require setting up an altar for exorcism, performing ceremonies, and using Vu Hitch secret techniques to activate. Now, the bloodline of this silver-furred donkey breed has degenerated. It cannot be considered a demonic species, far inferior to the Shenzhou army of old. Nguyen Ho nodded slightly. First, tell me about the distinct characteristics of this silver-furred donkey breed. The White Maiden Goddess said, firstly, one must find someone skilled in taming donkeys and horses. Use secret methods to refine men and donkeys into the Shenzhou army. And also appoint one silver-furred donkey as the donkey general. After that, this silver-furred donkey will become as intelligent as a human. When marching and fighting, the donkey will take precedence, and the men follow the commands of the silver-furred donkey and the donkey general. The Shenzhou army doesn't just consist of men in armor wielding spears to kill the enemy. The silver-furred donkeys can also use their iron hooves, bloodied muzzles, and their bodies to kill, their lethality far exceeding that of well-armored cavalry. Nguyen Ho felt his horizons broaden. Since ancient times, cavalry had always been led by men, with the mounts being steeds. These donkey soldiers were the opposite. It wasn't the man riding the donkey, but the donkey riding the man. Nguyen Ho asked again, are there any other methods? The White Maiden Goddess nodded slightly. There is still one more divine ability. But this method cannot be used by ordinary silver-furred donkeys. Only the donkey general, head of the Lu Shou, can use it. This divine ability is called soul calling. The rest did not need to be elaborated by the White Maiden Goddess. Nguyen Ho was already very clear about this method and understood its potency even more. If on the battlefield, one called a person's name, causing them to be unable to move, and then, amidst tens of thousands of soldiers, slew the enemy's commanding general, everyone knew what consequences that would entail. It was past midnight. Nguyen Ho would either approach and stroke the donkey, meticulously asking the White Maiden Goddess about the characteristics of the silver-furred donkey, or he would ask her about the past of the Shenzhou army. At this moment, it seemed this donkey was even more captivating than a person. After questioning until deep into the night, Nguyen Ho finally learned what he wanted to know, then suddenly changed the subject, asking about something else. Nguyen Ho had someone lead the silver-furred donkey away, entered the room, and sat down behind the writing desk. The White Maiden Goddess also changed her posture and direction, prostrating herself before Nguyen Ho. Nguyen Ho leaned down, his voice suddenly no longer as gentle as before. That horse-faced god led the herd of silver-furred donkeys straight northwest. Where does he intend to take that herd? Could it be? Does he have some secret preparations there? Do you know? The White Maiden Goddess's eyes flickered. She looked left and right, avoiding his gaze. This demeanor clearly showed she had already sold out the horse-faced god. Nguyen Ho, with one hand, pulled that pippa made of flesh into his embrace, like a fierce tiger pouncing on a white deer. The White Maiden cringed in fear, as if terrified of being devoured alive by the mountain lord before her. No, your majesty, spare this servant. Under the torchlight, Nguyen Ho's shadow cast on the ground actually transformed into a ferocious tiger, pressing down on the White Maiden. Speak, just a single, simple word, yet to the White Maiden, it sounded like a tiger's roar. In an instant, the White Maiden imagined all sorts of savage ways Nguyen Ho would humiliate her. Although the image of him as a demon lord was largely her own fabrication, her body completely limp, she, half crying, half recounting, whispered, Quote, "That horse-faced god has a tribe that has worshipped him for generations in the White Horse celestial region. It serves as his dwelling and also his foundation. This time, he is definitely heading in that direction." Unknowingly, the White Maiden goddess no longer referred to him as Lord Horse, but as the horse-faced god. Hearing the White Maiden goddess's description, Nguyen Ho immediately knew who this tribe was. The green-faced Zhang, the flying cavalry division. This wasn't even the most important part. What was important was that the Zhang chieftain of this green-faced Zhang tribe also commanded a cavalry unit and was, at the same time, a garrison general of the Great Shang dynasty. Regarding this flying cavalry division, Nguyen Ho, despite having arrived not long ago, had an impression. Previously, when Nguyen Ho's uncle, the prime minister, had recklessly summoned Bui Nguyen Kiu to the capital, Nguyen Ho had mobilized two-man forces from the south and north to intimidate the other party. This flying cavalry division was one of them. Exceedingly arrogant and insolent, when finally retreating, they had even clamored about coming to the western capital to see him for rewards. When Nguyen Ho was still a demon on the palace roof, he most despised this so-called son of heaven nonsense. And later, he became the son of heaven. At that time, he had only thought to himself, sooner or later, I'll kill all these wretched curs. He hadn't expected to hear news related to them again so soon. Nguyen Ho tightened his grip on the White Maiden goddess's waist, pulling her closer to him. He interrogated, "You're saying they want to rebel?" The White Maiden. This servant is not sure, but that horse-faced god has many followers within the green-faced Zhang tribe. The annual live human sacrifices have also never ceased. Nguyen Ho frowned. This was no small trouble. After thinking for a moment, he shifted his attention back to the White Maiden goddess. "In that green-faced Zhang tribe, are there followers of yours?" The White Maiden nodded, not daring to conceal anything. "There are a few." Nguyen Ho already had an idea. Kak Ban Dang Nghe Trian Demon Emperor Thai Great Dragon Audio Channel Chapter Soliving Tam County. Nguyen Ho immediately led his retinue of officials back to Tay Kin. This trip to the capital to pay respects to the late emperor, although marked by unexpected incidents, saw Nguyen Ho accomplish his predetermined goal of bringing back the silver-furred donkey. Simultaneously, he eliminated the possibility of the late emperor's soul in the imperial mausoleum manifesting a golden needle to threaten him. However, the power struggle with the local factions from the west within the court was still ongoing, and he had yet to gain complete control over the situation in the imperial court. At this moment, Nguyen Ho was in his study, practicing calligraphy. He appeared calm and composed, yet there was a hint of him showing off his increasingly proficient calligraphy. There was a time when Nguyen Ho would never have imagined that one day he could produce such brush calligraphy. In an instant, he, a demon, had also become refined. "Come take a look. How is my calligraphy? Has it improved compared to before?" Chu Jiaiko of the Pursuit Bureau, who was kneeling on the ground, heard the summons. He immediately stood up, bowed to take a look, and then resumed kneeling. "Your servant is a crude man. I only feel that your majesty's calligraphy is like dragons and tigers, possessing an aura capable of swallowing the world." Nguyen Ho actually wanted to ask if his current handwriting was significantly different from before. But after asking, he remembered that Chu Ji County had probably never seen the Son of Heaven's handwriting and calligraphy previously. After finishing his calligraphy and ordering someone to clear it away, Nguyen Ho went further inside. Chu Ji County also followed him in and, from behind a screen, began to report on matters. "Your Majesty, these are the rumors circulating in the streets." Before Nguyen Ho had even entered the capital, he had heard that rumors were spreading wildly within Tay Kin City about the strange occurrences in the late emperor's mausoleum. As the saying goes, good news rarely leaves the house, while bad news travels 1,000 miles. Rumors ranged from the late emperor's skull being stolen, to evil spirits wreaking havoc in the imperial mausoleum, and even that the late emperor's ghost had manifested to confirm the Son of Heaven was a demon. They spread like wildfire, sounding quite convincing. Nguyen Ho picked up the report and examined it. his brow furrowing immediately. Excellent. Even the intricate details of what happened that night had been leaked. This, of course, could only have been known by those who were present. Chu Ji County said, "Your Majesty, your humble servant must investigate the source of this matter." The last time Chu Ji County encountered this kind of problem, he thought of ways to suppress it. This time, his desire to trace it to its source could be considered progress. Nguyen Ho, there's no need. Chu Ji Ko, then, what should your servant do? Nguyen Ho said, the common people inherently enjoy hearing outlandish and strange rumors. Since these people enjoy spreading this particular rumor, you should also spread some other rumors. After a while, people will naturally stop talking about it. Since someone wanted to spread rumors, Nguyen Ho would counter by spreading his own, thereby making the situation utterly chaotic. Upon hearing this, Chu Ji County was surprised. However, he quickly said, if that's the case, then, your servant actually doesn't need to do anything at all. Nguyen Ho looked at him scrutinizingly. Oh, and why is that? Chu Ji County said cautiously. Currently, the most widespread rumor in the streets is actually about something else. Nguyen Ho asked in surprise. There's another matter? What other matter could possibly be more significant than the spirits wreaking havoc in the late emperor's mausoleum? With a vengeful spirit even taking the form of the late emperor to declare the current son of heaven an evil being? Chu Ji County hesitated, but finally, under Nguyen Ho's insistent questioning, he revealed it. It turned out that Nguyen Ho had first pursued and killed Vu Hitch of the Hell Dao, and then punished the temples of the netherworld gods. Then, seemingly from nowhere, he had invited a celestial maiden named Du Hong to be enshrined in the Celestial Maiden Palace. Regarding the Celestial Maiden Du Hong, this immortal who had suddenly appeared as if fallen from the sky to be worshipped by the Dai Tin royal family, people in the capital began to speculate about her origins and even her relationship with Nguyen Ho. However, the existing legends and myths related to the Celestial Maiden Du Hong were insufficient. Thus, the populace of the western capital, based on fragmented information, began to weave their own stories to complete the narrative. Rumor had it among the common people that the Celestial Maiden Du Hong was originally a fairy attendant of the Queen Mother of the West. She descended to the mortal realm to play by a lake in the Phoenix Emperor Mountains, where the Son of Heaven, Nguyen Ho, encountered her while hunting in the West. Struck by her beauty, he harbored ill intentions and captured her. Others said the fairy was trapped by demons in the mountains and was ultimately rescued by the Son of Heaven. Afterwards, in his desire to keep this celestial maiden, the Son of Heaven purportedly killed Vu Hitch of the Hell Dao and expelled the netherworld gods and spirits. He even purportedly cleared out the Celestial Maiden Palace, all to keep this peerlessly beautiful celestial maiden, whose beauty could topple cities and states. In the mortal realm, this explanation somewhat aligned with the known facts. Nguyen Ho had indeed returned from a hunting trip and then abruptly brought this deity back with him. Even the fact that Nguyen Ho, who had previously shown great reverence, suddenly expelled and launched punitive actions against the Hell Dao's sorcerous evils, was plausibly, if somewhat forcedly, explained by this narrative, making it sound reasonable to the populace. Moreover, there were some even wilder rumors, those truly circulating rampantly among the common folk, which Chu Ji County dared not repeat. It was said that on the 1st and 15th day of each month, the Queen Mother of the West's palace maiden would appear to meet the Son of Heaven, weeping and begging Emperor Nguyen Ho to allow her to return to the heavens. But the Son of Heaven would not permit it, insisting on forcing her to stay. Setting other matters aside, Chu Ji County himself had vaguely heard that deities frequently descended to the Violet God Hall to meet the Son of Heaven. As for the details of their encounters and how she was forced to stay, there were 100 different versions circulating among the common folk, each unique. Chu Ji County stated, these rumors are circulating in the streets far more widely than any others. Nguyen Ho was stunned for a moment. After processing it, he felt it was indeed quite understandable. What could attract more public attention than matters concerning the late emperor? Indeed, It would be scandals concerning the current emperor's private affairs. And compared to the usual scandals of the imperial harem, the story of the emperor abducting a celestial maiden from the heavens was far more titillating. Compared to this, who among the common people in the streets would care about the emperor's petty power struggles? Only the ministers and generals in the imperial court would pay any mind to such things. Nguyen Ho fell silent. A moment later, he chuckled, shook his head, and decided to let the matter go. Although it was somewhat absurd, it meant that the objectives of those who spread the initial rumors would indeed not be achieved. On the first night of Nguyen Ho's return to the capital city, in the Grand Hall, Nguyen Ho had just bathed and changed his clothes. As he passed by several screens, the mirror placed before a pillar, shimmering between illusion and reality, suddenly emitted a radiant light, as if opening a doorway. Through the doorway, layers of mist and clouds billowed out. Nguyen Ho walked towards and stepped into it. In an instant, he found himself standing beneath the celestial palaces of the heavenly realm. Surrounded by a host of divine generals and fairy maidens, the celestial maiden Ju Hong invited Nguyen Ho to board a phoenix chariot to tour the palaces. Nguyen Ho inquired about attendant Fang. "Where is he now?" The celestial maiden Ju Hong replied. "Your Majesty, Attendant Fang has gone to guard the imperial mausoleum. In the future, with him stationed there will be no fear of sorcerous evils causing trouble." Nguyen Ho nodded slightly. That was not a bad arrangement. The phoenix chariot flew to the highest point among the tiered palaces. Stopping at a jade-paved corridor, Nguyen Ho disembarked and stood by a jade pillar, gazing into the distance through layers upon layers of cloud seas. Vaguely, in the far distance, he could discern what appeared to be a divine mountain, like a pillar supporting the sky. Nguyen Ho asked, "What is that?" The celestial maiden Ju Hong said, "That is the divine realm of Kunlun. However, the path to it is not yet fully open." Nguyen Ho, "Why have I never seen it before?" The celestial maiden Ju Hong explained. "Previously, the people of the western capital did not yet know that I once served under the Queen Mother of the West. So, the rumors in the streets had actually affected even the divine realm." Nguyen Ho, who had previously dismissed the rumors as insignificant, now suddenly realized their formidable power. Suddenly, the celestial maiden Ju Hong, trailing her rainbow-feathered robes, ascended into the air, drifting as if intending to head towards the divine mountain at the edge of the cloud sea. As she ascended, she turned her head and said to Nguyen Ho, "Your Majesty, you should force your servant to stay." The celestial maiden smiled beautifully, strands of her rainbow robes drifting on the wind, brushing against Nguyen Ho's body, some even draping over him. Quote, "Otherwise, I will have to return to the heavens." Nguyen Ho caught hold of her rainbow robes, slowly pulled her back, and then embraced her. Chapter Bay Nguyen Ho dreamed again that he was flying in the sky. This time, he flew very high, incredibly high. Strong winds howled in his ears. The biting cold wind froze his hair stiff. And then the warm breath exhaling from his mouth could tear through that cold gust. And below on the ground, a skull was frantically fleeing across the fields, looking at him as it let out a long, terrified scream. Previously, a large group of detached heads had fled from the Vong Tu rat tribe's territory. Now, this one before him was the last. The Phi Do Tran demon seized the opportunity, dived down, and completely captured it, and Nguyen Ho knew the Phi Do Tran demon would soon return. He opened his eyes wide. Nguyen Ho was still in the mortal world. He had never flown into the sky but was lying on a large, soft bed. Only, the bed was messy. The brocade blanket crumpled. Nguyen Ho lay naked on the bed, more than half of his body exposed from under the blanket. The soft blanket and the person Nguyen Ho held in his arms was the concubine from the imperial harem named Takai, who had previously been subjected to dark magic by the horse-faced deity but was now completely recovered. Her petite and delicate figure, when embraced by Nguyen Ho's long, sturdy arms, resembled a white rabbit trapped in a cage. Awoken from the dream, Nguyen Ho looked outside. He let out a long breath, released his hold, Preparing to get up, this movement immediately startled the concubine in his arms. Tu Zhaoyi looked outside. It was not yet dawn. Moreover, there was no early court session today. She was a little reluctant to let Nguyen Ho leave. Your Majesty, rest a little longer. Having said that, she also embraced Nguyen Ho. Only, compared to his embrace holding her, she was more like a vine clinging to a rugged, giant tree. Her two arms caressed their way upwards, her slender fingers like beetle vines climbing the tree trunk. Originally, this body had been somewhat flabby, its muscles soft and weak. But now, Nguyen Ho's body was as firm as iron and steel. Muscles like cast bronze tensed beneath his skin, feeling like smooth, taut silk to the touch. Added to that were the angular lines following the muscle masses, which made it feel incredibly smooth. Closing her eyes, it was as if she were touching a warm, soft jade sculpture, making her love it so much she didn't want to let go. Nguyen Ho propped himself up with one hand and sat up. The silk blanket slid down his body, revealing all its curves. He brushed aside her messy hair and gently patted her hand that was caressing him restlessly. All right, you go to sleep. Nguyen Ho felt full of vigor. Not a trace of lethargy. His body possessed inexhaustible strength and spirit. He stood up naked and stepped down. Palace maids kneeling on the floor immediately rose and dressed him layer by layer. The sky was still dim with pre-dawn light when Nguyen Ho had already taken up his saber and spear to begin practicing martial arts. It wasn't that Nguyen Ho was particularly diligent or felt any sense of danger, but simply that he felt the strength in his body would be stifled, as if blocked by something, if not released. His powerful physique brought Nguyen Ho an endless, river-like flow of abundant energy, and at the same time, it also seemed to bring him intense desires. Ever since using the divine ability, trans-soul form taking, shape supplementing, inherited from the Tri-Nyan country to devour a portion of the physique of the Lu Tu demon from before, all greedy thoughts seemed to surge ceaselessly along with the strengthening of his body. Nguyen Ho brandished his long spear and broadsaber, making them fly, as if wanting to pierce the blue sky and shatter the wind. He felt every muscle fiber in his body radiating desire, every curve of his muscles seeming to exude greed. His robust physique constantly produced them, nurturing the wild beast in his mind. He felt as if his belly contained a Teoti divine beast, no matter how much he ate, drank, or indulged himself. He could not dispel that hunger. Towards women, towards power, even ambition, and the urge to kill. Thud. Nguyen Ho thrust his spear into the face of a wooden stake, and the spear tip snapped off. Only then, drenched in sweat, did he stop, panting like a ferocious tiger growling. Changing into a different set of casual clothes, Nguyen Ho met with his ministers in the study to discuss several matters. Eliminating the Vong Tu rat tribe, establishing the Imperial Stables Directorate and the Divine Crossbow Army, guarding against the possible rebellion of the Tan Dien Quang tribe, a series of tasks. Your Majesty, regarding the extermination of the Vong Tu rat tribe, the Wu Shi Patrol and Inspection Bureau is investigating, but the attitude of the Grand General Pillar of State is unclear. This humble servant believes we should still act cautiously and consider the nation's welfare thoughtfully. Your Majesty, if we further strengthen the military, the Ministry of Revenue truly cannot afford any more land tax expenditures. The Tan Dien Quang tribe has always been extremely respectful and obedient. Never before have they. The Son of Heaven might appear to be able to decide many matters with a single word. But this depended on prestige, something unseen and intangible, yet truly existing. With prestige, those below would not dare to refuse outright. With prestige, even if there were difficulties, implementation could be enforced. With prestige, when he enacted a policy, a crowd of people would not rush forward asking why. And now, Nguyen Ho needed an act to prove his prestige. Facing the issues raised by the ministers, Nguyen Ho did not become angry on the spot or resort to any threats or coercion. He merely listened calmly to everyone's opinions and then perfunctorily concluded today's meeting. But as he stood up, Nguyen Ho had made his decision. That Vong Tu rat tribe must be annihilated. Although the common people didn't pay much attention to what had happened in the imperial mausoleum earlier, the great aristocratic families and all civil and military officials were still watching Nguyen Ho. Regardless of the reason, such a thing had happened at the mausoleum of the late emperor of Dai Tin. He had said it was all caused by the Vong Tu rat tribe, whether it was true or false. If he could not display the Son of Heaven's thunderous wrath, where would the Son of Heaven's prestige be? If he could annihilate that Vong Tu rat tribe, many problems that seemed difficult to implement would quickly cease to be problems. After a round at the martial arts training ground, Nguyen Ho went to the Celestial Maiden Palace to wait before nightfall. The long night was like water. A commotion was heard from the sky. Nguyen Ho waited for those things to return. Skull after skull, connected by something resembling a rope, flew back and fell into the Celestial Maiden Palace. Then, the ritual master of the Celestial Maiden Palace, Vu Hitch, immediately stepped forward and stored those skulls into jars. One by one. This time, Nguyen Ho did not kill these detached heads to extract their Tran souls and Tran essences. Firstly, because the success rate of extracting useful Tran essence was relatively low. Secondly, Nguyen Ho wanted to see if he could find a way to control the detached heads. Although the strength of these detached heads was very weak, and their movements were restricted to appearing only at night, however, their ability to fly alone was a significant advantage. The last skull, Nguyen Ho personally imprisoned it in a jar. Seeing the late emperor's skull glaring fiercely at him, Nguyen Ho stuffed it inside and then sealed it. Nguyen Ho imprisoned the detached heads in the Celestial Maiden Palace, with Du Hong Celestial Maiden, the Celestial Maiden Palace itself, and the palace guards forming 3 layers of protection. There should be no problems. Then, Nguyen Ho looked towards the Phi Do Tran demon hovering in midair. Come, that Phi Do Tran demon immediately descended, landing before Nguyen Ho. After dealing with this potential threat, Nguyen Ho could also arrange for the Phi Do Tran demon to undertake its next task, which was also a direction where its great abilities could be truly utilized. Go to Vu Prefecture. No matter what one wanted to do, the main thing was to grasp sufficient information. Only then could one make accurate judgments and responses. All calculations and strategies not based on intelligence and information were merely castles in the air. The Phi Do Tran demon let out a strange laugh, and immediately shot up into the sky from before Nguyen Ho, simultaneously carrying a gust of hot air with it. So hot. Only then did Nguyen Ho notice this peculiar characteristic of the Phi Do Tran demon. Or rather, of the detached heads. These beings seemed to constantly emit a wave of heat. Kak Ban Dang Nghe Trian Demon Emperor Thai Great Dragon Audio Channel Chapter Tam Nguyen Hu, dressed in a thin, loose robe, his hair disheveled, sat in the main seat. He held a wine cup in one hand, his eyes closed, lost in the moment, the very image of a fatuous ruler. However, in the hall, there was only one female musician and a few flute players. The female musician, he didn't know where she had come from, perhaps from the rear palace, or perhaps from somewhere else. Nguyen Hu was unclear. He only knew that he had expressed a desire to hear music. And she had appeared. After days filled with hacking and killing, it was time to enjoy himself a little. Recently, with nothing much happening, Nguyen Hu, on the contrary, felt an unsettling vexation in his heart, as if without some rebels popping up for him to kill. These times felt unfamiliar to him. Listening to the sound of the stringed instrument, Nguyen Hu felt the restlessness in his heart subside significantly. A eunuch walked softly into the hall, afraid that the sound of his footsteps would disturb the music. After entering, he said nothing, preparing to wait until the piece was finished before speaking. However, when the music ended, before he could even open his mouth, the Son of Heaven asked first, "Who has come?" The Son of Heaven's authority was growing ever stronger. There weren't many people who could cause a eunuch to disturb him at such a time. The eunuch replied, "Chu Gi Ko of the Pursuit Bureau." Nguyen Hu raised his hand, saying nothing, but the eunuch understood his meaning and had Chu Gi County summoned into the hall. and the female musician, holding her long zither, rose and immediately withdrew on her own. Chu Ji County entered, his head bowed, looking at the floor tiles, then knelt on the ground to pay his respects. Your Majesty, the Hone two-man tribe has rebelled. After confirming that Nguyen Ho had heard, Chu Ji County continued with the details. Quote, the Hone two-man tribe, led by chieftain Kung Thien, attacked the village of the Tan clan in Hak Exa Man territory, beheading the adult males in the village for a sacrificial rite. Afterward, they attacked Dang Tin County town, killed the county magistrate of Dang Tin, and proclaimed himself the Man King. Many from the mountain strongholds have taken advantage of the chaos to loot and plunder. Descending from the mountains, now, the entire Cao County is in turmoil, especially the chief minister in Kai Duong, who is deeply colluding with the Hone two-man and Bui Nguyen Kiu. Nguyen Ho had long been prepared for the Hone two-man's rebellion, so his heart remained untroubled. However, upon hearing the two words, Man King, Nguyen Ho's initially somewhat lethargic spirit immediately invigorated, and his eyes seemed to flash with light. And Chu Ji Company, it seemed, could almost hear the thunderous roar of a hungry tiger's stomach. At this very moment, Nguyen Ho didn't ask about the Hone two-man tribe, nor did he inquire about the Wu Shi Patrol and Inspection Department or the Ministry of War. Instead, he asked about something else. Is there any movement on Bui Nguyen Kiu's side? Regarding the imperial edict Nguyen Ho had previously issued to Bui Nguyen Kiu, Bui Nguyen Kiu had responded with a memorial that appeared heartfelt and utterly loyal, but effectively said nothing at all. And now Chu Ji County said, no movement for the time being. Nguyen Ho, on the contrary, frowned. He wasn't afraid of discovering problems, only afraid of discovering nothing. Bui Nguyen Kiu's side couldn't possibly be doing nothing. It could only be that they hadn't found out yet. Nguyen Ho said, keep a close watch on Bui Nguyen Kiu's military camps in Ling Prefecture. Report any movement immediately. Chu Ji Ko. Yes. The lack of clear movement from Bui Nguyen Kiu's side cast a veil of concealment over the matter. Nguyen Ho felt that everything in Wu Prefecture was like a thick fog. A fog he was eager to tear apart. Very quickly, the flying head Tran Gui that had flown to Wu Prefecture brought Nguyen Ho news from afar. In the night, Nguyen Ho dreamed again of that flying head Tran Gui. It was soaring amidst the endless mountains of Wu Prefecture. Flying head Tran Gui, do you have something to say? Nguyen Ho muttered in his sleep on the dragon bed. But these words seemed not to reach the ears of the flying head Tran Gui. However, sounds from the flying head Tran Gui's side reached Nguyen Ho. He could clearly hear the noises from its location. Nguyen Ho first saw the flying head Tran Gui fly over a fortified village that had been breached. The village itself showed signs of being burned. And outside, many headless corpses were piled up, arranged in a bizarre formation. By now, these corpses had decomposed and stank. But no one had cleared them away because soldiers were still guarding within the fortified village. This must be the village of the Tan clan in Hak Exa Man territory, which Chu Ji County had mentioned earlier, attacked and massacred by the Hone two-man soldiers. But the flying head Tran Gui didn't stop, it continued flying deeper. Nguyen Ho saw a contingent of man soldiers camped near a river. This contingent numbered only 300 or 400 men, but they were fully equipped with armor, including nearly 100 sets of iron armor. Upon seeing this, Nguyen Ho immediately became cautious. This was definitely not something ordinary man soldiers could possess. These Hone two-man indeed have a connection with Bui Nguyen Kiu, perhaps even being a crucial link in his schemes. It also became clear why these Hone two-man could throw an entire region into chaos in an instant. Then, the flying head Tran Gui appeared above another fortified settlement. This is the Hone two-man stronghold. Nguyen Ho saw the man people wearing golden torques around their necks and understood where this was. But the flying head Tran Gui flew straight out of the stronghold to a patch of reeds under the moonlight. There was nothing here. Nguyen Ho didn't understand the flying head Tran Gui's intention in coming to this place. What is it doing? But then Nguyen Ho saw a man and a woman furtively approach this spot. The man wore a golden torque around his neck, clearly a nobleman of the Hon Tu tribe. And the woman's attire was more like that of someone from the lands of Chu. She was likely a woman who had been abducted, or perhaps married off in an alliance. The man and woman engaged in the act of clouds and rain amidst the reeds, appearing extremely hasty. Both the man and the woman. Nguyen Ho thought to himself, this flying head Tran Gui is just a skull. Yet it still has such peeping hobbies? But afterward, through their conversation, Nguyen Ho understood their identities. The woman was actually the principal wife of the Hon Tu Man tribe's chieftain, Kung Thien, and the man was the chieftain's younger cousin. Every word the man spoke was filled with resentment that he was not the leader. And he vented this frustration onto the woman. In his own way, see if you still look down on me. Ah, look down on me. The woman seemed quite aroused as well, crying out loudly, just like that, fiercely take revenge on him. Take revenge on him. This couple had no idea that a skull, hidden in the darkness among the reeds, was watching their illicit affair. The vision ended, and Nguyen Ho successfully received the information the flying head Tran Gui wanted to convey to him. Knowing their identities, Nguyen Ho also understood the flying head Tran Gui's intention. These two can be exploited. The flying head Tran Gui truly lived up to its origin as a transformed human, though its speech was not fluent. Its meticulousness of thought far surpassed that of ordinary people. Nguyen Ho increasingly felt that this flying head Tran Gui, when used in coordination with the Pursuit Bureau, was truly being put to good use. It alone could be worth many Chu Gi Cuz. Nguyen Ho summarized the information just relayed by the flying head Tran Gui. There were 3 scenes in total, but each one was crucial. First, it helped Nguyen Ho understand the actual extent of the Hon Tu Man's devastation locally. Not just some perfunctory report like historical records describing famines leading to cannibalism. Second, the Hon Tu Man were not ordinary barbarian soldiers. They possessed iron armor secretly supplied by Bui Nguyen Kiu and were deeply colluding with the local chief minister. They were capable fighters and could not be treated as common man troops. Third, the Hon Tu Man tribe was not monolithic internally. There were various conflicts that could be exploited. Nguyen Ho awoke late at night. Palace maids outside immediately drew back the bed curtains, and a eunuch lit the lamps. Nguyen Ho pondered for a long time, then took up his brush and wrote 2 secret decrees. Afterward, he summoned someone. These 2 secret decrees, deliver one to Chu Gi Company and the other to the assistant administrator of the Wu Shi Patrol and Inspection Department. Yes, Chapter Chin news of the Hon Tu clan's rebellion soon reached the capital, causing a stir among the court officials. This news arrived a step later than that from the Trin Tap Bureau. And the Trin Tap Bureau's intelligence on the actual situation paled in comparison to the information transmitted by the flying head ghost. The court officials themselves did not know the specific situation there. What they reported was based on submissions from their subordinates. Information they had gathered themselves. Or, in some cases, outright rumors. However, before the Son of Heaven, it was an entirely different scene. Before dawn, eunuchs were already positioned both inside and outside the hall, kneeling on cushions spread on the floor, urging Nguyen Ho, court again. Nguyen Ho, whose goal was to become a debauched ruler, indulging in pleasure, naturally disliked attending court. The so-called small meetings for important matters, large meetings for no matters type of court assembly. Most of the time, aside from internal power struggles and clamorous arguments, achieved nothing of substance. Nguyen Ho would rather practice his saber and spear techniques than watch these individuals engage in their hypocritical righteousness. But this did not mean the court assembly was meaningless. Nguyen Ho was helped up, and he drowsily sat high in the main hall, dimly perceiving the commotion below. The Liao people are sinister, daring to follow heretical paths, desecrating the imperial tombs of past emperors, and cursing the sacred palace. If these individuals are not eliminated, how can we restore order to heaven and earth? These barbarians first violated the imperial mausoleum, then placed a curse on the Son of Heaven. If we cannot execute them, where is the imperial might? Your Majesty, the Liao barbarians are now so arrogant and rampant. I implore you to quickly establish the Western Barbarian Righteous Militia Bureau and hunt them down in their lairs. When the ruler worries, the minister is shamed. When the ruler is shamed, the minister dies. I volunteer to lead the prisoners of war and pacify these degenerates for your Majesty. Looking at the agitated and indignant officials, each one seemed eager to exterminate those Hon-Tu people. But Nguyen Ho merely glanced over them and vaguely discerned the true thoughts in their hearts. These people were all fanning the flames, some were gloating over others' misfortunes, hoping this matter would escalate as much as possible. Because the more it escalated, the more the Son of Heaven would lose face. And some felt that an opportunity had arrived, the more it escalated. Wouldn't the Son of Heaven have to rely on them even more? In an instant, the voices reaching Nguyen Ho's ears seemed to transform into different words. You, this Son of Heaven, didn't you refuse to listen to us? So what? You've lost face and are embarrassed now. Huh, didn't you abolish the Grand Chancellor and personally approve everything? Aren't you still trying to train some new recruits? Without us, you can't even suppress a bunch of Hon-Tu people. He looked at the people below, their hearts were different. Their appearances, their dispositions, seemed to change every hour, every moment. If he was strong, everyone would be a loyal minister. If he appeared weak, the court would be filled with treacherous officials and rebels. Nguyen Ho found it dull, his gaze shifting to his surroundings. The eunuchs to his left and right wore dark blue, narrow-sleeved round-collared robes, with fish-shaped pouches at their waists, holding gilded horsetail whisks, standing in attendance with bowed heads. He then looked at the palace maidens. Their hair was styled in high, 9 turns immortal, buns, and their short pomegranate red skirts, embroidered with luxurious silver patterns, trailed lightly on the ground. 2 rows of palace maidens held peacock feather fans with jade handles. All of this seemed far more interesting than the crowd of officials below. After the court assembly, Nguyen Ho discussed this matter again with the key ministers in the Hall of State Affairs. Still with no resolution, Grand Secretariat Li Hongdao, Your Majesty, I recommend a talented individual who can assume the post of governor of the Righteous Militia Bureau. Palace Attendant Huang Wei, Your Majesty, I also know someone. These people were not concerned with how to solve the problem, only with who would gain control of the re-established Western Barbarian Righteous Militia Bureau. A true man cannot be without power. And military power, it could be said, was an extremely crucial type of authority. The large meeting was fruitless, and the small meeting achieved nothing either. But soon, this troublesome matter for Nguyen Ho quickly found an opportunity for resolution. The office of the Trin Tap Bureau, from the outside, appeared to be just a slightly larger building, with extremely strict entry and exit. Nguyen Ho, cloaked, quietly arrived here. Those local factions, those foreign factions, were sometimes useful, but at critical moments, they were all unreliable. The ones who could truly be effective at crucial times were still the people Nguyen Ho himself employed and promoted. Chu Ji County led his men, kneeling on the ground to welcome him. In fact, since receiving Nguyen Ho's secret decree, Chu Ji County had not seen the Son of Heaven for many days. Nguyen Ho's visit today was precisely to inquire about the progress. As expected, Chu Ji County quickly reported his recent achievements, which also served as a report of his accomplishments. Your humble servant has sent men to the location indicated by that flying head spirit. The matter has been successful. That Kung Tu from the Hon-Tu clan has agreed to be an inside informant and join our Trin Tap Bureau, promising to pass information to us. Nguyen Ho, how did he agree? Chu Ji Ko, your humble servant hadn't even used any particular methods. Just a slight threat, and this fellow immediately softened. Truly a spineless individual. Your humble servant then promised great benefits. And this fellow, seeing profit, forgot righteousness, willing to sell anything for his own wealth and status. After all, whatever the Hon-Tu clan obtains, It all belongs to Chief Kung Thien. Kung Tu himself gets nothing. He himself already harbored resentment towards Kung Thien. Capturing him truly took no effort at all. For any power, the most terrifying thing was not external problems, but internal ones. Nguyen Ho having obtained the key to breaking the enemy from within. His confidence in this matter immediately increased significantly. With such a person inside constantly leaking information, and potentially acting as a traitor at a critical moment, Nguyen Ho suddenly felt the Hon Tu clan itself was no longer the problem, but rather a crucial opportunity to handle and resolve other issues. Bui Nguyen Kiu, the tribes of the Five Streams region, the Western Barbarian Righteous Militia Bureau, and so on. One term after another flashed through Nguyen Ho's mind. Some matters, when pulled, affect the whole system. All things in this world are inherently interconnected. However, Chu Ji County interrupted Nguyen Ho's thoughts and mentioned another matter. At the same time, that Kung Tu also presented an ancient sacrificial object passed down through generations of the Hon Tu clan. Nguyen Ho, who had been listening quietly, finally asked upon hearing this. What ancient sacrificial object? Chu Ji Ko. This object is very dark and malevolent. Your humble servant fears it might defile your majesty's eyes. Nguyen Ho, it's fine. Bring it out for me to see. Then Chu Ji County had someone from the outer room come out. That person held a set of golden rings, which looked unremarkable, and opposite him, another person came out, leading a goat. Chu Ji County said, "This is the head-snatching flying ring of the Hon Tu clan. One of the ritual implements held by the great shamans of the Hon Tu clan for generations. The golden rings worn by the Hon Tu people on their necks were mostly just ornaments. But among them, some were not." Nguyen Ho. What is it used for? Chu Ji County gave a signal with his eyes, and the person immediately threw the golden ring out. Swish, swish, swish. Following a series of spinning sounds, the flying ring had already latched onto the neck of the goat opposite. Chu Ji Ko. This object is specifically used to ensnare people's necks. Its angle is cunning, and its sudden attack is hard to defend against. Nguyen Ho. And then? The person raised his hand, on his wrist. There was also a golden ring. He twisted it, and the golden ring on the goat's neck was seen to twist accordingly. In an instant, the goat's head fell to the ground. The goat hadn't even had time to make a sound. Blood spurted all over the ground. The dripping sound of blood accompanied by the strong smell of fresh blood. Chu Ji County said, according to legend, this head-snatching flying ring is made from copper from Changyang Mountain. There is a large and a small set. The large one is placed on a person's neck, and the small one is worn on the hand by successive great shamans. The large and small rings use mutual magnetic attraction. Twisting the magnetic ring can take a person's life, snatching their head from their neck. Unfortunately, the forging method is only known to the great shamans of the Hon Tu clan. If more could be made, this item, used to control certain people to do things, would surely be invincible. Chu Ji County was a sinister and shadowy individual, and he seemed to quite like this thing. This was a peculiar weapon, not used on the battlefield, but at critical moments. It had a miraculous effect in controlling others. Nguyen Ho. You also quite like this item. Chu Ji Ko. I merely think this item is very suitable for our Trin Tap Bureau. It's just that this name is a bit too blunt, lacking any artistic conception, and not intimidating enough. Nguyen Ho looked at him. What do you plan to call it? Chu Ji County heard the sound of that dripping blood. I want to call it Blood Drop. Nguyen Ho looked at Chu Ji Company, who had a somewhat gloomy aura, and at the courtyard filled with the kneeling hounds of the Trin Tap Bureau, each holding a blood drop. He turned his head again. In the corridor behind him, the so-called flying head spirit, which was just a skull, was being worshipped. The malevolent aura of this Trin Tap Bureau, if word got out in the future, would probably be enough to stop children from crying at night. And Nguyen Ho, as the son of heaven, the one who controlled these hounds, was also considered to be speeding along the path towards the image of a tyrant. You have just finished listening to episode Sao of the audiobook, Demon Emperor, at Great Dragon Audio Channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get the latest updates. Thank you so much.